Alrighty, well, it's 7:05 and we'll go ahead and get started. Tonight we have Nikki Bowman talking about Concierge Beekeeping, and these meetings are brought to us by the Kansas Honey Producers Association, and if you're not already a member, we'd love to have you join. It's $15 for annual dues. Becky, did you have any comments as president before we get started?
Thanks for asking, but no, it was a beautiful day in Eastern Kansas to go out and work bees, which is why my picture is off, because I work bees all day. So a little not presentable, but all good. So thanks, Nikki, for being here. I sure appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, I was still in bee clothes an hour ago. So, oh well.
All righty, so if you have any questions, hold them to the end and we'll ask them to Nikki and we'll just go ahead and get started. It's all yours, Nikki.
All righty, well, we're going to share screen here. And I got it in my way. Okay.
While she's setting up, I'm just going to say next month we're going to be doing honey beer. We were going to do honey beer and mead making in the same one, but we're going to split those out and we'll do honey beer in May and honey and mead in June. That's all.
Okay, so you guys all have my title screen up?
Yes, it looks good, Nikki.
Okay. All right. Hey, that's half the battle after getting everybody signed in. Okay, so I was volunteered, I guess. I don't remember when or what, but it's a cool name for mentoring and concierge beekeeping. I call it contract beekeeping. Basically, it's getting paid to take care of other people's hives. It's a part of my beekeeping business. I do, I do honey and all those other little things. But 4 years ago, I was asked to take care of somebody's bees for hire, and word of mouth, it spread and it became a big part of my business. So whether you're mentoring or hiring out to become a beekeeper for somebody, it's similar to, like some of the ranches, they have somebody that does the row crops, they have somebody that takes care of the cattle. It's the same thing. Usually it's a landowner and they want hives, or they have hives and they want to hire somebody to take care of them. There's a lot of things to consider. So that's some of the things I'm going to talk about, and at least stick in your head so you can think about it and have a better learning curve than I did. So beekeeper for hire, are you ready? That's the first thing you need to ask yourself. And I kind of figured it would be a smaller audience tonight because I know a lot of people don't consider themselves, a mentor or somebody who could go and teach somebody else, that they're not confident enough, or they don't feel like their results are good enough, and that's okay. But it's just something. Other people have a lot of confidence, so you just need to ask yourself, are you ready? What are your qualifications based on your experience? And I would say one of the biggest ones would be your success rate. That's kind of what people want to know. So what are your winter losses like? And what's your honey production like? There's people out there that have more experience, many more years of experience than I do. And they don't produce very much honey. They have a lot of losses every year. So you need to ask yourself, based on your results, would you pay somebody to hire you to take care of bees for you? And I got this from, it's been shared from Randy Oliver a few times. I tried to find the original one this week on his scientific beekeeping website, but I couldn't find the original, but I know he's shared this at some of the conferences, and I think somebody added some onto it. I have a friend, she's kind of in the 4th year, 5th year. You know, a lot of people, they'll get a package or, you know, 2 packages their first year. They're all excited, you know, they go to all the classes, and it just seems to be beginner's luck, or maybe it goes both ways, I guess. But a lot of people seem to have beginner's luck and have their hives survive the first year through the first winter. You know, they don't have that big varroa load. And so they're very confident through their first year, through their second year. And then around 3 or 4, reality hits, and you know, it gets a little more complicated. Maybe they have more issues with swarming. Maybe they start getting higher mite loads, and you know, that could just be because their hives are strong. Maybe they have more disease in their, you know, that's established, maybe more chemicals in their wax. But it seems like for a lot of people around the 4th year, everything kind of goes sour a little bit, and you go, oh, maybe I don't know so much. And then you kind of work your way back up. So if you're going to hire out to, you know, have people pay you, hopefully you're on that slope of enlightenment at least, or the plateau of productivity. But the thing is, there's always people with less experience than you know, all those people that have never been in a beehive before. Even if all you can do is help them install their bees and show them how to feed them and stuff, you know, that's valuable, and that's a huge lifeline to a lot of people. So mentoring for hire is not a huge part of my business. I started mentoring people with the Concierge Beekeepers because, like a lot of clubs, our purpose was to help each other. You know, we hoped that the experienced beekeepers would help the less experienced beekeepers, and then everybody kind of pay it forward and keep it going. So our first year, we tried to get mentors for all the newer beekeepers. And the thing is, and that's what I kind of thought about for tonight too, a lot of people said, oh, well, I'm not a mentor, you know, I'm not experienced enough, I'm no expert. And so they were hesitant, even though they had a lot of experience. And so we started calling them bee buddies, you know, just somebody to call, give you, you know, the second set of eyes, somebody with a little more knowledge. And that was huge. So we had bee buddies, and we said, you know, all first year beekeepers, which this was a small new club, we would try to get all new beekeepers a bee buddy in their area. And that was really successful. I think I think there was probably about 6 or 7 of us that were experienced enough to help others. And we each had about 10 to 12 people that we were helping. And so then, like I said, the plan was they would pay it forward. You know, the next year we would have new beekeepers again. And, but then we found the second year, you really don't know everything yet. Then you have swarming and splits and all that. So we found that really most people need about 2 years of somebody to kind of guide them through. And so I've always hated to charge for that. You know, I have learned from the generosity of other people. You know, so many things I've learned have been through people in KHPA and such. So, you know, I want to pay it forward. We're a community. However, there are some people that they want somebody to do it for them. Maybe they got the bees and they decided it wasn't for them. Maybe they're too busy. They didn't realize the, you know, time involved, or they just want somebody to really hold their hand. This gal in these pictures, she's one of the zookeepers at Sunset Zoo. I usually train some of the zookeepers there. So she was our new beekeeper last year. So every year I train a zookeeper, and she moved on to bigger and better things in New Mexico. And now we have 3 new zookeepers that are really interested in bees. So that's exciting. That's that pay it forward, because they're going to go and they're going to teach others. So when you're looking at potential clients, you know, whether it's somebody that you're just helping or somebody who you're going to charge for your services. Kind of think about, I usually help out people for free for starters, but after a year or so, unless they specifically ask, hey, can I just pay you to do this? Look at who's doing the work and taking the initiative and keeping records, because most people that I've helped and advised, they have the initiative. I'm not calling them and telling them it's time to do this, it's time to do that. They go to meetings, they take classes, they read books, they put the thought into it, they listen, they take notes, and then they go out and do their best without anybody telling them to, and then they just check in when they have a question or they aren't sure about something. So, those are people, there's no charge for that. If somebody's putting in the work and they just need, to confirm what they're thinking, of course, I'll help them out. I'm happy to do it. And a lot of those people, they go forward, they go and pay it forward. There are some people, again, after about a year and a half, you can see that they never call you and say, hey, I'm about to go in the hives. This is what I was planning. Does this sound right? You just don't hear from, they don't take any initiative at all. If you don't call them, they don't do anything. And those are the ones I found that's not my job anymore. If they want to pay me to, tell them it's time to do things, to inspect for them, to do the work, to do the thinking, just to make a record of what the inspection was like and make a plan of what to do next, then that's a job. You're putting the onus on me, and then that would be a paid mentoring position. And you can kind of see those, and it isn't a big deal to say, hey, I've helped you out here. Do you want me to keep track of this for you? These are my fees and this is what I would offer. But like I said, most people, they take their own initiative, and they're doing the work, and they're just to you for a piece of advice. So if you do decide whether you're asked to mentor for somebody, or maybe somebody's struggling and they don't want to give it up, but you offer to them to mentor for them, then you need to decide what you're going to offer, what's going to be part of your service. You should definitely have inspection notes. I mean, somebody should be doing those anyway. If the client isn't already taking notes, well, that's, part of your service is, this is what you have. And then the future plan, this is when they need to be checked again. Are you going to do it? Am I going to do it? You also need to figure out your mileage and supplies. When are they paying you? Is it for your time in the car, or is it just when you're there? And as far as supplies, if you're having to feed their bees for them, or if they're out in the country and you've made an appointment like this Saturday, that will be our next session of me mentoring you. If they didn't pick up sugar or whatever feed you need, then you need to be working those out as if that's going to be part of your reimbursement, and they need to be prepared to reimburse you for that. Or if it's up to them to go run, you have 48 hours to run to the store and buy some sugar and make some syrup. So there's a lot of things you need to be very clear on whose responsibility. And then guarantee and risk. So if you go in there and say your agreement is once a month, you help them with the beekeeping, for an hour or so for a couple hives, and you have your inspection notes, you inspect them together, you've made your plan, and on those off weeks, you say, okay, you need to get in here, in 2 weeks and feed them or check for swarm cells or something. What if they don't follow your instructions? Maybe you instructed them to do a mite count, which you've done a few times before together. Or maybe they followed your instructions and they don't have good results. Maybe you had a winter loss. Maybe you didn't have a good honey harvest. how are both of you going to feel about that? If they've spent a lot of money hiring you to take care of it, and then there's a winter loss or not a good harvest, or if they didn't follow your instructions, you both need to discuss those things up front, because you can't be there every day to do every single inspection for them. And then you need to figure out your fee. You can do it per hour. You can make it a flat rate per hive and say, okay, I'll come once a month for 30 minutes per hive or something like that. But this all needs to be spelled out so that you're being clear on what you're providing to them. And so if something goes wrong, you can show that you did, what you both agreed on. So like I said, I don't do a whole lot of the paid mentoring. I've done it for a couple. A couple of them have just straight up asked, can you just, I want to be involved, but can you just kind of take charge and do it for me together? So that's the difference between mentoring and completely taking over. Some of the others, I just had to kind of offer it to people that, hey, if there's too many times they've said they haven't been in the hive for, 8 weeks or something, and you keep instructing them, in a friendly manner that, hey, you need to, this time of year, you should be checking them every 2 weeks. At that point, you could probably step in and say, hey, would you like to just pay me to mentor you? A lot of people, that I do help, some of them are only once a year, like this time of year with splits and requeening, those kind of things. Sometimes I only see them once a year. And even though we don't have a paid agreement, they either give me gift cards or pay me cash or give me gifts or something. It works out. I'm still getting paid in a way without us having that formal agreement. So just kind of find what feels right, but really cover yourself and put things in writing for that. So the other topic here is the concierge, but I like that word, or contract beekeeping. And that's a big part of what I do. This is where it's someone else's hives and their colonies, and you are solely responsible for taking care of them. Everything is on you. There's none of that they need to help or review notes or make a plan. It's just you. This is your responsibility, and that's it. So the pro to this is that you get to take care of more beehives. So that's pretty nice. And you don't need to invest in more equipment in bees. It happened for me at a time when I wanted to expand, is when I wasn't working at the bee shop anymore, but I wanted to keep working more bees. But 10 hives at that time was about $5,000. I wasn't wanting to pay all that to expand my business. And then it worked out that somebody needed a beekeeper. The con on it is there is risk for both parties, depending on how you set it up. If there's a bad year, if there's a bad harvest or bad weather or something, one or both of you could kind of get the short end of the stick. And by that, I mean money. Okay, so potential clients. This was my very first yard to contract with. This was 4 years ago this month. The hives were already there. Somebody else was taking care of those 10 hives. They set them there, and they were more of a bee haver than a beekeeper, and they had 100% winter loss, I think 2 years in a row. And so they asked me and said, hey, I'm trying to, there's this ranch owner, he has 10 hives. I tried to take care of, it's not me. Would you be interested in this? So that hit just about the right time. And I met with the landowner. This was just some hunting land of his. There was a cabin, and I don't know how many acres it is, probably a couple hundred acres. Good forage down in a valley. So I met the landowner, and told him my experience, and he said, oh, well, I have more land. Instead of doing these 10 here, let's do 30. And so we had about 3 weeks till the bees came in. So we threw together hives, got a last minute bee order in, and that's how I got started in this. And then a week later, he was telling a friend of his about it who had just bought some land from him, another ranch. And those people said, oh, well, we live down in Dallas, but we have 2 hives and we like bees. So can she put 10 hives on our place too? So my very first year of starting with this, I started with 40 hives. 10 of them, or 30 of them, were brand new, new foundation. And then these 10 here in the picture, those were kind of old. That was the black foundation, the black beeswax kind of thing. And that wasn't my ideal location there along the driveway. It's off the road. And again, at that time, it was the family just went there for hunting and weekends and stuff. It was just a cabin. So there wasn't a lot of traffic, but that has changed quite a bit. So your potential clients are either landowners like ranch owners or business owners that they want to have bees as part of their business or as part of their ranch, or that they just want a whole lot of honey, maybe to sell at their business or for their own use, but they're not able or wanting to care for them. They are not interested in beekeeping themselves, but they got a nice piece of land, maybe they got some cattle on it, they have some row crops that somebody takes care of. A lot of these had alfalfa and clover at the time. So, just a nice fit. So just like all the other employees they have taking care of their place, they wanted a beekeeper. After that first year and those first 40 hives, then it started coming up, and you guys have probably seen it on Facebook that beekeepers say that they're either allergic or, a lot of people in that early curve, they're really excited and they make splits a couple years or whatever, and they keep expanding and get up to like 8 or 10 hives or so. And then they realize it's not for them. It's more than they thought. They're allergic, something like that. And they really enjoyed beekeeping, but they just couldn't keep it up anymore. And or they have a farm and they're doing other things. Other parts of their farm has grown, but they need some help. So the beekeeping is something nice to hire somebody else to do for them. So that's where my other clients have come up. 2 of them, 3 of them were beekeepers. One of them actually lives on a farm, and she just found her niche doing something else. She and I started about the same time, and I just went big with bees and she went big with flowers and strawberries and garlic and stuff. And so we just kind of complement and help each other out. The other 2, they were just bee havers. They have so many other interests and businesses and stuff. They were, having 90 to 100% losses every year. So they just decided, they like selling the honey, but the beekeeping was a bit too much. So they hired me to take care of their hives for them. So between those 3 people, I think I'm up to about another 30 hives, 30 to 30 hives. So I'm running almost 80 hives for other people. So that was my potential clients, these hives here. It's kind of a boring topic for putting pictures. So I just put a bunch of pictures for the yards that I work because it's neat. They're all unique. This is the flower farm. This is Woolly Bee Farm north of Wamego. Hers are beautiful. They came with her farm. They're kind of close together. That's the way she had them set up. And of course, this time of year, it's busy bee week, and you're just trying to make splits and watch for swarms and feed everybody and whatever. I didn't have time to redo it all, so I just squeeze in there. But it's a happy little place. So most of mine has been word of mouth. I just don't have to advertise. Like I said, that original businessman went and told somebody else. Or, like I said, a couple of those people, it was people that were buying nukes every year because they had huge losses. And, one of them said, they felt like a failure or something like that. And then I'd say, hey, would you like me to do for you what I do for some of these others, and explain it? And it works out really well. One other possibility, if both parties are kind of considering doing this, is test it out with your hives. basically an outlyard where you're putting your hives on somebody else's land, even for a trial period. So I have two landowners right now that are interested in putting hives on it. One's a vineyard, and then the other one I met this morning. Beautiful, beautiful bee land. He told me it was 800 acres back in January. He lives up in Chicago. He was finally down here, has the little hunting house and stuff, but so much forage everywhere. It's just beautiful. But we're going to test it out just in case. 800 acres doesn't mean that it's good bee land. And he showed me the alfalfa, and it was right close to the house. He thought, near the house, and that clearing was good for hives. And I said, but aren't they going to spray the alfalfa? Well, yeah, that's true. And then we went up this hill, and we're in this gator, and he said, I could have the code to the garage and use the gator whenever I wanted. But it's chugging up the hill that has a lot of big ruts in it. You can tell the runoff runs down it. And, I'm picturing having it loaded with honey supers or trying to get there in winter, to do that kind of thing. And I said, no, I don't want to go up the hill. So we really had to look around. Then he mentioned, well, they bring cattle in for the summer. Okay, well, I don't want them where the cattle are. And then I said, well, what about burning? Because I've been burned there too. So you really, and sometimes people just don't think about those things. And with experience, like I said, that's why I'm here to tell you some of those things to think about. But sometimes you just need to give it a trial first, like maybe 5 of your own hives. And that's what I'm doing at the vineyard. They have something like almost 200 acres, and they don't spray a lot of pesticides or anything like that. However, they have weddings there and other events. And I don't want, they are willing to consider buying 10 hives, which, you all know is like $6,000 to $7,000 right now. But that's going to be a big blow if we put 10 hives in and then they need to be pulled because despite our best efforts, they have bees showing up to weddings in August or September. So we're going to do a trial of 5 of my hives to make sure everything works out before we do that. And after these 4 years, I would recommend it, unless somebody really wants to buy the hives or they already have them. Give it a little trial for 1 year first and make sure that there's nothing that comes up, because moving hives is not very fun. So yeah, here's the one that was last year where they burned their hillside, and they have my phone number and they have instructions to call me, if there's going to be any pesticide spraying or something. Well, they tried to burn last April, and as he said, they got a little close. So like I said, that's one of those things you need to consider is spraying and burning. Another big one, and like with any outyard, is suitable driving distance, because your time and your gas are a lot of money. And so every time you have to make a trip, you're losing, what you've made. The clock is ticking, and whether you figure out as an hourly rate or whatever, you're losing money every time you need to make a trip or go a little further. Like any outyard, you need to, it needs to be accessible when you need it. That means when it's snowing, when it's flooded, when it's raining, all those kind of things going on. You need to be able to get there all seasons and also have gate access. You don't want to drive 30 miles. And this was one that they brought up for the University of Montana when talking about having outyards on other people's property. He has specifically said, you don't want to drive 30 miles and get there and somebody changed the lock on the gate and you can't get a hold of them, or they're not able to come and bring you a key, or, you can't get a hold of somebody with the code. So, gate access, I've run into that one before where somebody changed the lock. Excellent forage. Some of these yards that I've done the first year, they did great. And then especially those first 2 ranches, they did great the first year, and then they started making other plans for these ranches. So a lot of the forage was taken out. Soybeans were taken out. Alfalfa was taken out. One of these, they just had corn last year, and whereas 4 years ago it had a huge harvest, last year it was hardly worth my time. And so we had to have a big talk in June. I said, this is really getting to the point, it's not worth my time to drive out here, because the bees are doing great, they're strong, but there's nothing out here for them to make honey. So you need to be comfortable enough with the owners to have a talk with them. And then you need to figure out what everybody's goals are. And that's a big thing for me, for beekeepers anyway. And I ask a lot of new beekeepers that, is their goal to make splits and have more hives, or are they really wanting a lot of honey? Where are their priorities at? And there's some people that just want pollination. So when you're taking care of somebody else's hives, what are they wanting out of it? Are they just wanting the honey for, like their own use, or they have a store? A lot of these people I work for have their own businesses, and so they sell the honey there. Or, do they just want some of it? Beeswax doesn't come up very often. I do keep track of how much each yard produces for beeswax. And if most of them just don't care, they just say keep it, but I do keep track of what they produce and keep it separated out a little bit. The gal with the flower farm, like, she likes to make lip balms and stuff, so I always keep hers and I keep it separate and render it for her. Splits, so is the person wanting to expand and have more hives the next year, and so they want the splits? Or if there's a swarm, who's that going to belong to? Most of these people don't care, and that's part of the business, is that I get to keep any splits or swarms. And then most of them have something that they want pollinated. That isn't a huge deal with them. Most of these people just want the honey, either for their own use and to give out to friends, or to sell at their own businesses. And then, what's going to work out for you? So here comes the fun part, is the money. And this part's kind of tricky, and this is individual to everybody, is what both of you are comfortable with. Are you getting enough money in the good times, when there's a really large honey harvest, when maybe you're able to make 2 splits off of a hive in the spring and sell them as nukes? And what's the worst case scenario, if there isn't a very good harvest? So one way to do it, and this is highly individual, it's like renting cropland. Some people just pay cash rent, a flat fee. Some, both parties, the farmer and the landowner, pay in the inputs, and then they split the crop. You can do this however you want. So you could do it as a flat fee per hive. It's a steady amount for you. But if there's a poor harvest some year, like those people that they just replaced everything with corn, and there really wasn't much honey, are they going to be okay with that? Say they have 10 hives and maybe they pay you $200 a piece, and that's not very much, but just for easy, let's say $200 a piece. So that's $2,000 for a year. Are they going to be okay paying you $2,000 and not get very much honey, maybe like 10 gallons? Are they going to be okay with that? And are you going to be okay with that? Because you've put in, if you track how much time you put in, are you going to be okay with that? In that situation, you're probably okay, because you got paid, but they're not having much to show for it. And they had paid for the hives and the bees already. Another option, if the person isn't very interested in honey, is you could split the honey, and then it's up to you whether they pay for the cost or if you guys share the costs. And by those things, they would still own the hives. They can sell them at any point, but the inputs, like mite treatments and sugar for syrup, which I calculated really isn't that much. Are you guys going to split the costs also, or is the landowner going to pay for that? And then you keep half the honey. So some people I know do it that way. I do it performance based. So because if I do a really good job and have a really good year, then I want to be paid for that. And if I don't do a good job, or, it's not good for anybody, then they're not paying me for something that didn't work out. But like I said, I'm very honest with them of, if you take out all the forage and you're not producing much honey, then this isn't worth my time. And they're usually really receptive to that. So there's a lot of seed out there this year for clover and such. So I do mine performance based, where I get a fee per pound of honey. So the more honey I get the bees to produce, the more I get paid. And then I also, since most of these other parties are not interested in splits, they're not wanting to expand. They don't want the bees. It's of no use to them. The majority of them, I get to keep the split. So I split all the hives in the spring. I replace any winter losses. So again, the better job I do, that original yard, I didn't have of 10, I didn't have any losses on it, which was a first. And another yard, I only lost one. So if I do really well, I don't have to replace winter losses, and I have more nukes to sell to other people. And so that's part of my pay. But yet the landowner isn't having to pay me for that. I'm being paid by the people that buy the nukes, and then I'm getting paid for the honey. And it's a low enough amount that the landowner is still getting some investment, because remember, they originally paid maybe $6,000 for 10 hives. So they still have that money invested, but yet they get however many pounds of honey that they can still sell for a profit. So that's the way I've done it. This is my 4th year, and it's worked out pretty well. This picture, that's on gate access. Even if you have the code for the padlock and you made it into the ranch, if their son's boyfriend or their son and his girlfriend come over, and the girlfriend parks at the gate, and they're also building a second home, so there's a porta potty for the construction guys, you cannot leave the ranch. And of course, this is down in a valley where there's no cell service, and it's a couple 100 acres. So it's hard to just go out and say, hey kids, can you move your car? So this was a new one for me. I was actually stuck inside the ranch and had to walk out far enough to get cell service that I could call somebody to get a hold of the kids to move the girlfriend's car. Okay, so responsibilities and risks and who pays for what. So all of these, the hive owner, the landowner, they purchase all the bees, all the equipment, all the supplies. So mouse guards, queen excluders, all those kind of things, feeders, anything that gets used for maintenance, which is basically sugar and mite treatments. Since I have so many hives that I take care of, I just buy those in bulk. And then when I invoice them, like now sugar is about 50 cents a pound. I just invoice them, spring feeding was this much honey. And that makes it a little easier. So they're not having to go out and buy 10 mite treatments when I've got, a box of 40 or whatever, Formic Pro. However, if you're doing a honey share agreement where you're keeping half of the honey, you need to decide in advance and agree in writing which supply costs you're going to split. And then what about replacing winter losses? And like I said, the way I do it is I replace the winter losses because that's mostly on me. All of us do have an agreement in our contracts, though, that if there's something like catastrophic, like a huge storm or something, like tornado like storm, or everybody's done everything in the best that they could. Maybe there was a flood, even though y'all thought it was in an area that hasn't flooded in 1,000 years. If everybody's, nobody's at fault, y'all did your best. Most of the landowners say they'll replace they'll replace the equipment and, maybe buy 5 or most of the bees for the next year. Because like I said, part of the appeal to them, especially the people that were beekeepers already, is that they had been buying new colonies every year. So, 10 packages or 10 nukes. And now I am saving them. They're not having to buy that anymore. So they're thankful, if something huge happens, they're okay with, paying for the replacement bees and equipment. Luckily, it hasn't happened yet. I've gotten really smart. I've had to move some hives a few times, but not too many. And like I said, I've gotten really good at answering questions asking questions before we even get started. This picture is somebody's garage. And that's the other thing, is where's the equipment going to be stored? Most of them we store at their place if they have a shed or a garage that I can have access to. And you can see this guy has kind of a hodgepodge. The big thing I'm doing this year, I had been writing in Sharpie just really quick on the inside and some frames, so I knew whose super was what, but it's getting too confusing having so many supers at harvest time. So we did get stencils so I can tell everybody's apart. And then harvest time. So how is the honey going to be delivered? Do they want it in bottles? Do they just want it in big 5-gallon pails so they can bottle it or do whatever they want with it? Bottling it is included in my fee per pound. So it doesn't matter if I'm putting it in a bottle or leaving it in a 5-gallon bucket and they want to bottle it or they just want to scoop it out of the bucket. My flat fee is the same and it works out, for all of them. Most of them, the ones that have me bottle, since they're not beekeepers, they just have me use whatever bulk bottles I buy. I just buy them by the case. It keeps their costs down and makes it easy. So I'm not waiting on somebody, a non-beekeeper to order cases of bottles. I just keep everything in stock. Most of us use the same sizes and I just keep them in stock and then have them reimburse me. And even if you do 5-gallon buckets, some of those buckets, I've started using Uline, the locking lids, for a lot of them. And those things, even in bulk, are still about $10 a piece after shipping. So, are they going to keep them? If that's the case, make it clear to them, if they keep them, that's $10 a bucket, or, they need to make sure you get them back. And then what about crystallization? So that's a big one. Some of these people put the bottles in their businesses and don't want to deal with the crystallization. So I fill it, refill their stock maybe quarterly. And some people, they just have a few 5-gallon buckets and they just say they'll take care of it. So that's something you have to consider though, because you don't want somebody putting it on their shelves in their store and then 2 months later saying it crystallized. Well, whose responsibility is that going to be? Do you need to teach them to take care of it or have a price for it? And then when things go astray, like I said, things can happen: storms, floods, fire. Bricks are good. Bricks usually do the job okay, but if your yards are 30 minutes away, and nobody lives there, it can be without a lid for quite a while. So that's something to consider. Location changes. I only had one client that kept changing his mind of how he was going to use his land. And now I know better and I have a moving fee and it goes up each time I have to move them. I think some of his hives in the first 2 years, I moved them 3 times. So it's gotten to the point, if it's not an emergency, if I can do it, say in the next week or 2, and I was going to inspect the hives anyway, it's a small fee, but it's going to double. Maybe it's $25 the first time and 50 the next and 100 the next. Animal damage. So the latest thing is one of these places has some cattle that keep getting loose. Not even their cattle, it's their neighbors. So you pull up, nobody's been out there, and you see some hives are astray and a couple cattle out there, and then sure enough, you have evidence there of who did it. And then, as I talked about earlier, the beekeeper's responsibility for winter losses. But you need a plan for all of it. And then figuring out when you're going to get paid. Are they going to pay you quarterly, to kind of cover some of your expenses at the end of the calendar year? So after you've harvested, you've done your mite treatments, you did your fall feeding. So is it going to be once a year? Is it going to be at honey harvest? That's something that you both need to agree on. These again are just some of the different yards that I do. One of the guys, the bottom two are the same owner. The pallet was something he bought on a whim. He went to Oklahoma last spring and he came back and he said, "Hey, I bought a pallet of hives. I put them up in this pasture. Just wanted to let you know." So I've got kind of a little of everything. Hillsides, you need a way to get to them. And then that top picture, another question is, who's going to mow around the hives? Is that part of your job or is part of their responsibility? Cattle, yeah, that one I like to laugh at because that was 2 years ago. And that's when the original owner, like I said, he has that driveway that nobody was driving on. He specifically told me, he said, "We will never be a large cattle operation." And in the last 2 years, he's grown to over 100 head of these specialty cattle. And there is so much traffic on that driveway. And yeah, I think we're going to have to move them again. So at the end of the year or the next February or whenever, you need to get together and review the prior year's performance and issues like cattle and access and stuff, and make your future plans. Some of these people I only talk to twice a year. They're either local and they're really busy, or they live out of state and only come here, a few times a year for football games and stuff. So, but you need to track them down sometime and discuss, how things went. So like I said, one of the owners, I had to have a talk with her and said, "Your honey harvest was awful. It really dropped. And it was because there was no forage left. Whereas, it used to be great." And then make a plan for the next year, readjust. And then also talk about maintenance needs. So here's that guy's garage again. He went and bought a bunch of extra supplies, like extra boxes and stuff. So you need to decide, whose job is it to paint those and repair things and, plant new forage. And those are all things to consider. So that is the end of my presentation. This text on the left and this bottom picture, those just happened about 3 or 4 hours ago. So I had a quiet evening planned of just getting some things done before our meeting tonight. And I got a text from the lady down in Texas. Come to find out, she's up here, and she texted me, "I have some hives that are open." And that looks like cattle to me. So I said, "Hey, I'll run out there. I'm on my way." And of course, it's the furthest one. It's 30 miles. And I get there, and sure enough, their neighbor's cattle had gotten out sometime, in the last 2 weeks. And I also got there and there was a government van, state of Kansas van with a whole bunch of people standing around that limestone building, which has been just covered. You can see that really large pile that has all been cleared out in the last 2 weeks. And there were like some students from K-State, they're taking pictures and they had a drone and stuff. I think their plan is to build something back there, but that really big burn pile concerns me so close. I mean, you can't say, there's probably a good 40 feet there, but that's going to have a lot of heat coming off of it. And there's 10 hives right in front of it. So I don't want to be moving those in July. So I get to talk with this lady and say, "Hey, what's the plan and who's going to be responsible? And this is my fee, for if I'm going to have to move these hives before you burn them all up." So yeah, that was just 4 hours ago that I had to make a special trip to go take care of that. So, and hopefully those cattle won't get out again. So that is all my warnings and learning trial by fire, but it is very neat. If you just want to work lots of bees, it's a good way to do it without having to plunk down those thousands of dollars, and you make some more money on the side. It's a nice little chunk of money without having to put all the investment in. So if anybody's interested in doing this kind of thing, go ahead and contact me. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Nikki. We've got a couple questions. The first one is Jane Kills asking, what about beeswax wraps? Does anybody, I guess, use their beeswax for the wraps?
They could. I don't make beeswax wraps for any of them, but like I said, if somebody wants, one of the gals, the one with the flower farm, she's at the farmer's market every week. And so she uses her beeswax. And like I said, I just keep track of it and render hers separate. So I hand it to her when I give her the honey, but what she does with it, that's her thing.
Okay, and then Lisa Tokash is asking, did the burn colony survive?
Yes. Yep. They did just fine. I just had to repaint the sand down and repaint the hive, but I knew exactly what happened, and they live in town. Their signal was just fine. They could have called me and I would have at least stood there and, maybe with a pail of water or something when they were getting too close. But so, just because people have a lot of land and maybe a lot of money, that doesn't mean they think of everything. So
Okay. Oh, I guess Jane Kill's question was, she wanted the next value added series to be about beeswax wraps. So, Suzanne Hackett says, great information. Thank you, Nikki. Jane Kill says, thank you. Robert Burns is asking, what's your record keeping? I use MS Excel spreadsheets and record and record every visit and what I did and the needs.
Yep, I use Excel. I also record all of my mileage. That is one nice thing about all of it is I have a lot of mileage. And so just doing my taxes lately, gosh, it looks like I don't make very much money. And, since I'm bootstrapping all of it, I don't have any loans or anything. Yeah, I don't need to prove to anybody that I make a lot of money. So the IRS says, oh, she doesn't make much money because boy, she sure is putting on some miles. So the mileage thing will really, it adds up. But I take a lot of pictures, and that's why I had a lot of those pictures. Is sometimes I'll take a picture if I can't write my records right away, I'll take a picture. And so at the end of the day, I can finish up my notes and know exactly what the hives look like, and to show the homeowners the landowners if there's something they need to know.
Bob O'Brien says, thanks, Nikki. Great presentation. Robert Burns says, laugh out loud. I should, as I can, put 100 miles just going around town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I put a lot of miles on my vehicle going around helping people.
I have a 20-year-old pickup Ford F-150 that I bought for like $1,500 8 years ago because I only went 6 miles. And then I got all these ranches to work, and they're all 30 miles. They're on the other side of the Tuttle Lake. So my truck makes it. But like I said, I don't want a loan. I don't want a car loan or anything like that. So I'll drive it till it dies. But it rattles, but it works, and it doesn't cost me anything. So
cool. Melanie Bailey says, thank you, Nikki. Robert Burns says, I take pictures with my phone as well.
mm-hmm.
Next one is great presentation, good info to consider. And Robert says, I've had a new one for a year and it's over 20,000. Yes, great presentation, says Robert.
Thank you.
So that's all the questions we have as right now. Does anybody else have any questions? They can unmute themselves and just ask it directly.
Hey, Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Western Kansas, and this past year I had one hive get blown over twice. So I've resorted to using ratchet straps to hold them together.
Mm-hmm.
And the last time I had a ratchet strap on when it got blown over. And so the top box was the only one that got dislodged a little bit. So that's just an idea. And it would probably work if you got cattle getting out too, where they're bumping the hive.
Yeah.
A ratchet strap will kind of hold everything together.
Yeah, I have straps on some of mine here at the house where we get wind so bad. And yeah, those people at the cattle, this was the first time in 4 years, and the cattle got them last month. They had the poop there to prove it, and they called the neighbor, but then I got that text and it's like, oh, they didn't fix that fence very good. So Yeah, we may be having a talk about they need to buy me some ratchet straps.
But they seem to help quite a bit. And this is the first year I've resorted to them because, I mean, we've had some crazy winds out here.
Yeah. Of course, on one of those pictures, you could see, the cattle had pushed from the front though, so they had
Right.
pushed it, front to back. So darn cows. Always something.
Once they get out, they seem to keep wanting to get out.
Yeah.
Because I run cattle also. Well, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Oh, I think there was one more question.
Hey, Nikki, yeah, I was asking if you have anyone that you have any hired hands that help you out.
Well, I had somebody call the first of this year and I told him, no, I didn't need anything. And now I kind of regret that. But yeah, I've had my kids, but 2 of them have graduated college and moved on. And the last one's going to graduate high school next month and she has no interest. So I'm on my own right now. And then I accepted a job at the Save Farm for Veterans. And, this is Big B week with splits and queens and, packages coming in for some people and just everything hits at once. And I started to count today. So I have about 160 production hives, so full honey production hives. But like right now I have nukes made to sell to people in a couple weeks when they're ready. And then I also have queen nukes that I raised queens in. So if you count a colony as having a queen, I think I have close to 300 small to large colonies right now. And it's a bit much, especially with, we've had Easter, 2 people are having surgery in my family this week, and prom is Saturday night, all these things, a presentation. So, and then those calls like, hey, can you come out? A cow bumped it. So I think I'm gonna mess around with my business plan a little bit next year and kind of offer some of my business pieces to other people. So, but yeah, either that or I need to hire somebody, but I'm feeling it this week. So
I'm just exhausted listening to you explain all that. So good luck.
yeah, it's an annual thing. And I tell people, hey, it's bee time. So about from April 1st to, I usually try to have all the nukes passed out by Mother's Day. So I, usually tell people, hey, 6 weeks. Yeah, I'm putting in 60 to 70 hours a week at least. And yeah, then we had, 2 surgeries and all these other things come up and one about to graduate. So everything's kind of hitting at once. So it's life. We'll keep going. So university interns. So that's, I'm training veterans. So like this Saturday, I'm getting some packages in addition to the ones from Christy for KHPA. And I'm training veterans this Saturday on installing packages. And so that's part of it. I'm going to maybe shift parts of my business over to them. So, or any of them that are interested in it. So we may do things a little different next year. So, but I enjoy it. It's one of those things that it's grown gradually. So.
On the hives that get blowed over or cows knock over, I put 2 T-posts on each side and then tie ratchet straps to stabilize it.
Yeah, I've done that for some that were actually in, with cattle in a cattle pasture, just a couple of them, but yeah, it's also kind of a pain. So it's kind of, that's the landowner's thing. I mean, they have millions. They can hire somebody to do some of that or pay me to go to the store and get them. So, but they told me they were going to take care of it last month and obviously they didn't. So now they're going to start, either they need to fix it or they need to start paying me to fix it with ratchet straps and T-posts. So, or if we have a bad year this year because they still didn't plant enough forage to make a decent honey harvest, I may just cut with them. So, tell them that things need to change, or they can sell their hive, and that's just it. They own those hives. They can sell them to somebody. They can do something different, but you need to be able to have these conversations with people of, hey, this isn't working. So things need to change on your end too. So, and usually they want it to work. So.
Well, cool. Thank you very much, Nikki. That was a great presentation.
Mhm.
And Jolie, did you have any announcements?
No, I put in the chat box for ideas for future talks, and that's where the beeswax wrap idea came from. So
Yeah.
Otherwise, if anyone wants to unmute and give us some ideas, we're kind of at the point where we'll maybe start repeating some with different speakers. Like I know Christy does a lot of mentoring, but she does it a lot differently than, she has a different plan than what Nikki has. So might mix it up a little bit unless anyone has any great ideas. We're open for listening about them. So.
All right. Well, thanks for attending, everyone. And Nikki, I'll see you tomorrow sometime.
I'll see you tomorrow night. Hit the road more miles.
There you go.
All right. Thanks, everyone.